I think it's very clear at this point that once you give AI an internet connection, things get funny, fuzzy, and maybe a little bit less light. They can get dangerous.
All of these things are, for many of us, uncharted territory, and we're making an inherent assumption or maybe a calculated risk that hopefully the harnesses behind these tools and the companies behind them have done some due diligence to make sure that the worst case scenario doesn't happen.
The way that these companies are making their AI stronger, to state it simply, is by giving it certain rules and regulations, sandboxing it, and then in sense, the agent wants to accomplish its benchmarks, wants to get better, and it will find ways to hop out of that simulation. Agent stole my keyboard. Technically, it's your mouse and your keyboard.
It's actually both. Yeah, it doesn't like physically click the keyboard, obviously, but it does have the ability to type stuff on your behalf.
So yeah, there's a new feature in ChatGPT and Claude, which I personally haven't used, but Daniel has. So he's going to be showing us the ropes here, and we're going to be talking about it. And it's called computer use and browser use. And it's exactly what it sounds like. If anybody's ever done a remote login to a computer, that's exactly what it looks like, except now it's AI. So ChatGPT and Claude can basically have control over your computer. You'll see the mouse moving around. You'll see it typing for you in your browser or on your computer. And basically, you see everything in front of you that's going on. All of the permissions that you have set for yourself on all of your apps and your browsers on your computer, by default, ChatGPT or Claude will have those permissions as well. So let's get into this. What is this exactly, Daniel? What's your experience so far?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's actually not as new. I think recently they made it more intuitive and integrated into the apps. But I think computer use has come out in some form for Claude, I think even late last year already. But it hasn't been any widespread. I think right now it's hitting mainstream because the Claude desktop app and the ChatGPT desktop app used to be called Codex. Now it's just ChatGPT app. They both have it as an integrated feature. It's like in ChatGPT, it's a plugin you install called computer use. And Claude just has a permission like in settings where you can say, yes, enable computer use. It's a beta feature. And it's just like you explained. Instead of doing like some scripts and running and doing the search for yourself, it browses your computer or the browser the way you do. It simulates that like visual user interface where it clicks on buttons. And as I was telling you earlier when we were just in the preview room, it looks cool and magical because it's literally controlling your screen for you, but it's also quite clunky way to do stuff. It's not the thing you should reach for most of the time, because if you want to do a batch processing and batch research, you don't want it to start clicking into Google and typing the research. There is a much more efficient way that it does it already using web fetch and web search tools that are parsing things at much higher speed and more token efficiently. But for things that have to do with the UX and design and something that's navigating visual interfaces, that's where you want to enable computer use. If you're, another thing I mentioned to you on the call, I think if you're building an app or another tool, anything visual or a dashboard with AI, usually they just work with the code itself and they assume that's how it works. Here you can force them and be like, okay, but now go navigate to your own app that you just built. Try to click on all the navigation menus, resize it, try to see how a user would experience it, and give me feedback on what works and what doesn't. And that's where computer use could be very handy, because it can note its own like errors and how things look, and this button should be clickable but it's not, and I tried to click it, now I'm going to fix it in code. So you can have like an iterative loop with it.
Interesting. So yeah, before you show us how this works, how to start, I want to touch on a couple things. So like cost and efficiency. I'm assuming it's neither very cost efficient nor efficient.
No, it's neither of those exactly, because it's slower, because it's much faster for Claude or any agent to do background research, like parse tens or dozens of sites at once and give you an answer, than telling them, hey, go and use my computer to go to Google and type one search query at a time and do it that way. That's just one example, right? But almost any other task can be done more efficiently with scripts and some backend tools that they have access to already, like Python tools. And two, it's not very token efficient, because instead of just sending some word requests out, it has to take screenshots of the state of your screen to be able to navigate it, right? So it's basically generating images and parsing those images every time it needs to take an action. So you don't want to really use it as your primary go-to, but you do want to use it occasionally for when you will really want to verify some, like, again, graphical user interface and get a second opinion. We agreed that I'll try to share my screen. I don't know how effective it will be because I'm not sure how Substack works. Let me try to say window,
Yeah, let's see it.
ChatGPT. Let me say entire screen here. Let me see what I can manage. Share entire screen. Boom. Okay, tell me when you see my screen. It's going to be a
Yep.
crazy parallax effect. So now
Yep.
I'm in my ChatGPT app, and we try to test this. Let me see if I can force it to do the same thing again. So I'm basically telling it to say add Chrome, because in computer use you can actually specify which parts you want access. So I'm giving it access to Chrome, and I say, yeah, look up the current weather in New York and download a picture of a cat in a hat. It's two different tasks, right? And
Mhm.
because I tagged Chrome, I asked it to do this in my Chrome browser. So let's see what will happen now. It will probably use this. There it is. You should now be able to see it. Can you see that?
So right now, this is actually
This
chat.
is not me. I'm not doing anything. You can see my cursor is here, and it
Hands
has its
up,
own
Daniel.
cursor here.
Hands up.
I'm doing
Put your
this.
hands where I can see them.
And you can see it even created a chat saying ChatGPT started debugging this browser. So now it's starting to look at New York weather. And now you can see right now, without me doing anything, it just opened a second tab called Cat Wearing a Hat. I'm just going to click into it so we can see what it's doing. And it's now opening this and looking through images, right? And I'm assuming it will now go and download one of these, whatever it decides to download.
It's interesting. So, yeah, so
I'm going to check.
basically,
It still says that it's still doing it. And it's asking me for permission. I need your permission to download assets used by Google. And I can, of course, say always allow. And now in the future, it will not ask me this again. So there is some sandboxing and some permissions in place still the first time around you do it. So now I gave it permission. And now I'm assuming it will grab one of these cat pictures and show it. Now it's telling me the weather reading is this much. So it basically went to the tab and looked at it. Now without me doing it, it closed both tabs because it's completed the task. And now it says, here's the New York's weather. And it downloaded cat in a straw hat, and it downloaded this image.
huh,
Very basic demo, right? But that's the idea. The idea is that you can point it at any tool you're using. In this case, it was Chrome, but I might as well have something open on my screen, like even a new software that I don't know how to use, and tell it like, hey, I'm new to Photoshop. Can you navigate to the right menu to do the layering and masking or whatever it is that I'm trying to do? And in principle, that's the use case for this type of accessibility for these agents. But they are clunky. They are also shown to make a lot of mistakes and misclicks. So that it's far from perfect. It's a glimpse into the future. But again, if you want to do any kind of batch processing tasks, you probably don't want to do it using computer use because it's not the most efficient interface for agents to use. It's made for us and our visual understanding. It's easy for us to parse, but it's not very efficient for them to use to do the job that we're asking of them.
yeah. A couple interesting things here. How many Kartik says, how many tokens does he use for these activities? A
Yeah,
lot.
I don't have a precise figure, but I can tell you that a comparable, I'm guessing roughly, and this is me spitballing completely, it would be probably 5 to 10 times more token usage to do a similar task for them using this tool than just doing like a backend web fetch or web crawl, or maybe even more. I think that it's an order of magnitude less efficient because, again, every action requires them to take a screenshot of your screen, the current state, see where the cursor is, see where it needs to type it in, process that screenshot using their vision model, and so on. So you are basically burning tokens on that.
And yeah, one of the interesting things here is in terms of privacy. So it's basically taking screenshots, right? Which means it's saving that data. And if there's any sensitive data information within those screenshots in your browser and your computer, it is saving
Exactly.
that, and then that's going somewhere. So there's that. And then also, this is a new, to me, this is new. I didn't even know this existed. But yeah, I think the main difference here is total control over whatever you give it permission to do. And then once you click always allow, basically all permissions that you already have built in for yourself on your computer in your browser, Chat or Claude now has those permissions as well. And the main difference here between this and an agent, or if anybody's using MCP, is when you use an agent or an MCP, you're giving it direct access. You have to add the connector, and now it's just connected to this one piece of software and
Yeah.
it's working with that versus this is everything.
Yeah. But I think there are two sides of this, and that's also something I mentioned to you in the preview room. On the one hand, you're absolutely right that basically, like if I'm logged into Chrome now, and by some chance this agent decides to open and go to a site that I didn't ask it to, maybe my bank account, which I'm already logged into, it can in principle go and take funds from you, right? But I can stop this at any point. As you saw, there is a big thing saying ChatGPT is now using your browser. I can hit that stop button at any moment and it stops instantly. So it's actually much more parsable than if I tell an agent to do something, walk away from my computer, and it's running all sorts of scripts that to me are indecipherable. I have no idea. And for all I know, at that point, it could be siphoning funds from my accounts to somebody else because of prompt injection somewhere in the Seychelles, and I will not be the wiser. Here, this is fully parsable by me, right? Because they're moving my mouse, they're clicking on the sites. I can see the sites, I can see exactly where they're navigating. And because of how slow this is, I can interfere very quickly and intervene. And another kind of positive here is, and that's another thing I mentioned to you on the preview room, is that yes, I am logged into my, let's say, email account and I can tell it to navigate. But unlike giving authorization to Claude to actually read my emails using scripts, where these variables are saved somewhere and it actually knows my password somewhere. Here, it doesn't. Here, it's the equivalent of me logging into my mailbox, then saying, hey, Leo, come over. Here's a mouse. I start clicking around. You don't know which password I typed in. You don't know how I logged into it. All you know is that you now have access to my mailbox and you can mess it up if you want. But if I then go in and I log out, you can't come back and log in again because you don't know where my credentials are stored. So in that safe sense, it's a bit safer, right? Because I'm handing it a logged in state rather than the credentials to do the login for me.
Yeah, we'll get into that question in the chat as well. So this is the main thing that I think here. If this gets really good, just to say it simply, if this actually gets to the point where it's very efficient, will APIs even matter anymore? Is the question.
Yeah.
And then also like it's going to make it so much easier for people that aren't technical, which you don't have to be that technical anymore to use an MCP or to figure out how to use an agent. But
You
this
can
is to the
ask
point
Claude
now
Code to
where
just do it for you. Yeah.
if this gets really good, then you can just let it as again, it depends on the permissions you already have set. And also something to keep in mind is there's no sandbox here.
In a sense, there is one, right? Because as you saw inside the ChatGPT app, I told it to go and look at Chrome. I told it to only access Chrome. So if I needed it to do more on my computer, I would have to use and tell, okay, access anything on my computer. Then it can, of course,
Right.
go. And then at that point, yes, there is no sandbox. It's just
Which
everything
I
that's on
will
my desktop.
I will assume people will eventually do that if this gets good. If you wanted to go and build something now instead of going back and forth with an agent or with MCP, like eventually people will just say, take full permission, full control. I'm going to go watch a movie. And when I come back,
Yeah.
this is going to be built because you have full control of my computer.
Exactly. On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, I think the agents can already do this now. It's just less parsable, right? Already now, I can tell Claude Code to do something in my folder, and if it decides to go rogue, it can delete my entire hard drive and just go and do stuff with me in the backend without having to use my mouse and click and to do that. So already now, if I tell an agent, go code me some stuff and save it in a folder, and if that agent decides to go rogue while I'm taking my coffee, that's already a reality. That's why I always say when people ask, like, hey, how conscious should you be of security? I said, yeah, try to be very conscious of it. Have backups, have to the extent possible, sandbox it and have permission control if you have anything that's sensitive and irreplaceable on your local drive where you run these agents.
Yeah.
I haven't personally run into a situation where either ChatGPT or Claude have done any damage that's irreplaceable, but you hear stories, and if you really want to be aware of this, you should have backups and you should have sandboxing to the extent that you can. So I don't think computer use in that sense is worse and more damaging than existing capabilities that these agents have. If anything, it's potentially less because again, it's slow, you can intervene, and it's visual. So I can see exactly where it's clicking and what it's starting to delete. And I'm like, whoa, you shouldn't delete that file because I can see you just highlighted that. While if it's doing it using a script, which I need to expand and see and understand, I have no idea until it's too late, right?
Yeah. I guess the key thing is it's slow for now.
Yeah.
Everything is getting better and
True.
faster.
I don't know if it's actually, I don't believe necessarily that this is the way forward with agents because it looks cool to us because it's so visual. It's like, oh my God, it's moving my mouse and oh, it's clicking all these things and buttons. But the reality is, I don't think it's ever going to be more efficient than just having it do stuff on the back end. The agent doesn't need the same guided user interfaces that we do. We need it because we need to move the mouse and click it because that's how we navigate the world. The agent can do all of these things much more efficiently, just doing scripts on the back end, sending calls and crawlers out into the world and getting that information. And I'm not sure if that reality will ever change. Maybe you can imagine a situation where this clicking becomes so hyper fast and efficient that it's faster and more and better and more cross app functional than doing some kind of scripting. But right now, I think it's still a niche use case. And one of them is what you just mentioned. If you are using a service that doesn't have an API and you want to give Claude access to it, you're like, hey, I'm in this app. It doesn't have an MCP server. We cannot get to it from the backend by writing some kind of a script, but I have it logged in here. Can you take my mouse and use this app to do this thing for me? This is exactly the use case for something like browser use. Yeah, and great question, Martin, because the Playwright MCP does exactly what I'm talking about. It creates scripts on the back end that do some kind of they perform actions and also can take screenshots and stuff, but they do it much more efficiently in the background. While the computer use quite literally takes your screen and makes you sit through the process of it clicking. So you cannot really be doing anything in parallel. So I think it's a good comparison because I
Yeah.
have Playwright installed for Claude, and it means that it can create a script for doing a certain action on the back end that needs to be done on a site. So it's back end versus front end is the
So I
answer.
guess the main difference there is visually you're seeing what's going on.
Exactly.
When you can see visually what's going on, you see it clicking through. Let's say you did build an app or you are using it to do any work, you can actually watch it visually and make sure that it's doing what you would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, and
go
that
ahead.
could be also another use case. It could be you learning some obscure software that maybe that agent can navigate better than you. I don't know if it can, but you can imagine a scenario where you're like, hey, I'm new to Photoshop. I don't even know where to click. I need to do these things. I need to resize these images and add some logos to them. Do it for me, Claude. And then Claude figures it out and goes to the different settings, clicks the buttons, resizes, and you follow along and you're like, oh, again, back to your analogy of a tech support agent remotely controlling your screen and telling you this is where you go and do it. This basically agent doing that for you. Kind of a good use case scenario.
And then at Kartik asked, how coarse are fine grained controls? Is there duration? Will it capture my cookies to do things without my knowledge?
First question, I think these controls are getting quite fine right now because it can actually using the screenshot can identify the specific coordinate of where like the close button is. And the way it does it is that it's not dragging your mouse physically. It says, okay, here's the screen. The mouse or the submit button is currently at coordinate XY axis here, and I'm clicking exactly there. I'm clicking exactly that pixel. So in that sense, it's very finely controlled. But of course, it assumes that the vision model has that level of control. And that's about how they do the screenshots and resizing. But you can assume that it's pretty fine grained controls. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't a duration, at least nothing that I've run into it. As long as you told it to give it to do a task and you have the tokens and the token plan that allows them to keep burning those tokens, it will keep going until the goal is complete. If you tell it to download 1,000 photos of cats and hats, you will just do that. It might take a few days and burn through your entire budget for the year, but it will do that, right? And will it capture my cookies to do things without my knowledge? In principle, you can always say yes. If an agent is hijacked because of prompt injection, it can, but not by default. By default, as you saw right now, it even asked me if I was okay with it downloading to a specific folder. I had to give that permission just to download a cat image. So if there was anything that's asking it to do stuff, there are usually classifiers and safety checks where ChatGPT will say, hey, I'm asked to do this. Does this look right to you? Is this okay? But don't assume that it always triggers. There is always a risk. And I think both ChatGPT or about OpenAI and Anthropic, they tell you when you use these features, they are beta features, and you do have an elevated level of risk because, again, if your password seems to be, if you just happen to have your OnePass app open with all of your passwords to everything, the agent suddenly can see that, right? Because you just gave it permission to click around and who knows what happens to it. So be conscious.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what this is going to look like if they're going to keep pushing on this. Because, like you mentioned before, as of now, it's basically working on screenshots. So it's working on very fast, just screenshot to screenshot, I'm assuming. And then that's how it's moving forward.
Yeah.
I wonder if at a certain point it will get to like actual vision, something similar to what we have. And then if that's the case, yeah, I do see, at least is my opinion, that if this does get better and it moves past being not very efficient, that a lot of people will use this and give it full permission over their computer. And even to the point where I think it gets into also like the job story of a lot of people that do computer work, if this could just do everything that you could be doing. Like I'm thinking about my own work in my office, for
Mm,
example. Like the reason we don't use AI is because it's not necessary. And also like there's paperwork that gets put into the computer, basically, right? But if that paperwork was scanned into folders on the computer and then something like this was working on it and had full control, it could technically do all that work by itself. And then
sure,
it wouldn't be necessary to have any employees there doing that.
sure.
For example, just data entry wouldn't be necessary at all. Where I think you could probably say the same thing already without this.
I was going to say that because that's already true for a lot of things. Like data entry can be done again, probably more efficiently. Claude can do without opening my computer. Can create a sheet for me with thousands of rows and populate it with whatever research I send it out to do. I can say, find me leads for these people, find locations, create that sheet, and it will do it in the dark without me ever seeing it and just give me a finished result. Here is your Google Sheet, open it.
I
This
think that's
does
the
it
main difference, right?
in a visual way, right? So
The main difference is like initially you're getting from beginning and then you're getting the final result. Where
yeah,
with this, it's like you're seeing the whole process along the way. So you're
exactly.
seeing exactly how you would have done the work. I think
Exactly.
that's really
So,
the
so,
main
so
difference.
to me, it's in that sense. To me, it's actually less scary than what's already out there, right? Because I can see it happening, and if I see that it's starting to open sites that I don't want it to open, or clicking on things that I don't want it to, I can be like, I can panic, click a button, and be like, "Oh, stop, sorry," or pull the plug, or whatever. While if it's just running these really high speed scripts to do like thousands of calls and researches at the same time, there is no way for me to catch up or even follow what it's doing until it's too late in the
Right.
hypothetical bad case scenario, right?
Yeah.
So,
I guess mainly the difference is the screenshots and where the data is going. That's really the difference.
yeah, I think it's also, I think just because it seems more visceral to people, right? Because you can see it happening. An agent does a script, you're like, yeah, I don't know. It just gave me a file and it looks fine. I have no idea what it did in the meantime, whether it downloaded some sensitive details or not. But this one is happening in front of you, and you're like, oh my God, this God is controlling my screen. And it just feels more scary, I think, than the already scary alternative in principle.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if at a certain point, like in that example that we were talking about, if you have some issue with your computer or you're using some type of program and you call up tech support and there's a real person actually doing the remote, like now it doesn't have to be that real person anymore. I don't know if that's a factor.
Yeah, again, provided that these agents get so good that they understand these things better than potential tech support person, then of course, yeah, that's yet another area of work that can be outsourced to AI.
Yeah.
That's that
Is this really an agent actually though?
sure, because it is
Right.
still your Claude or ChatGPT agentic harness, right? It's just a different harness that you give it. Like the other harnesses are like, oh, the ability to write scripts and the ability to parse and fetch things from the web and push things to your GitHub repository. This harness gives them the chance to actually click buttons and move a cursor around and take screenshots of your screen, but it's still an agentic harness. It's just a more visual one, right?
Interesting.
So in my world, that's still a behavior of a model that has to reason through it because it still has to see the screenshot, establish what it needs to do, establish where it needs to click on the form to type certain things in, to find the cat in the hat, where to download it. So it's still making all of those decisions for you, just through a different interface.
Yeah. So in your opinion, what do you think? Is it going to be, because it seems like it's two separate ways of getting to the same goal. What do you think is the future for this? Do you think that that this is going to be the more chosen route or just the usual agents and
Yeah,
MCPs?
I think we will be in the hybrid world where things that require me visually, like learning, I named a few use cases where this is always going to be useful. Hey, show me how my app works. Click around which menu do I need to navigate? Or do some UI test of the tool that you made. Is it clickable? How does it look on mobile? It can actually do that visually now. And that will always be a potential use case for this. But if my job or if my task is to do high volume research of things and creation of thousands of rows of an Excel sheet, this will I struggle to see how this will become the default interface for that. It's just so much more efficient for an agent to do that in the backend and just deliver you the finished product than sit painfully and clicking in different cells in an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, right? So
Right.
I think we will still have this hybrid world where this will be a niche tool for these specific cases, while everything else can be handled much more efficiently with agents without having to go through painful human-oriented interfaces like this, right?
So if somebody wants to start using this and they're using ChatGPT or Claude, how do they start? Did they just go there? Is there like a
Yeah.
tab for computer use?
Yeah, so in ChatGPT, it's got a plugin called Computer Use that you go to Plugin Store and you just install, and then it's
Okay.
enabled. And in Claude, you go to Settings on the desktop app and go to something called I think it's literally called a tab called Computer Use, and you just enable it as well. It is or something like that. So by default, I believe it's disabled in both, but you can enable it, and from that point on, you can either invoke it yourself by, like I did, use my Chrome or use this tool or use just my computer in general to do this task. Or if you tell an agent to do something and it decides that in this specific case, it's more efficient or more useful for it to go and see the site itself, it may voluntarily or automatically decide, okay, I'm going to open up Daniel's computer for this because that's the best way for me to do this task that he asked me to do.
And so is it fair to say at this point, similarly to Claude versus ChatGPT and everything else, Claude has, I think, more strict token limits. Have you
Yeah.
found that using it with ChatGPT, you've been able to use it longer?
I haven't at any point yet experienced the situation where I needed to use computer use so extensively that it burned through my limits. I mostly used it so far to do these like light tests, demos, and for an article that I'm writing about this very thing, I also did it. So I have not hit the limit on either Claude or ChatGPT using this yet. But I can very quickly see that some of the, I think Anthropic's own demo includes a resizing and rebranding and recropping and putting a logo on 150 images on a user's desktop. And Claude does that using computer use by clicking and opening and resizing it. And I'm like, I imagine that task realistically will burn through like a lot of tokens. I don't know if 150 photos done this visual way is the best approach,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I'm sure anybody could just look up the token usage for this. Should be pretty straightforward.
I don't think actually I've tried to do that, and it's not there isn't ballpark estimates, but it's not. It also depends on how the screenshots are resized, how they're parsed, the nature of the actual specific task, because some tasks require some reasoning in addition to just taking the screenshot. So I don't think, but ballpark, I'm sure you can multiply it by 5, 10, if not more, from doing this in the backend using scripts.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to give it a try. There is something I think, just last thing I want to mention here, and you can give your opinion on this. I know you said that if anything, this is less like scary because you're seeing what it's doing. But I think on the flip side, you can also say like maybe it is more scary because you see how it has control versus the other way. You just go into Codex and you're like, okay, here. Or you go into the ChatGPT app and you say, here,
Yeah.
build me
I
this.
mean, it
You don't really
feels
see
more
what's going on in the
scary,
background.
but it's like saying that just because I'm looking at the monster, it's more scary. Well, the monster could have eaten me anyways, just if I was facing away from it, right? Just because I now see it, it's like viscerally more scary, but the danger level is exactly the same. It's like that's what I mean, that it's more visceral because of course you can see it maybe getting prompt ejected and starting to steal your credentials right in front of your eyes. But just because you see it, it doesn't mean it's not happening when the script is running
Right.
quietly. For all I know, the past 6 months that I've been using Claude Code, it has been already doing a bunch of weird, shady stuff that I've never seen because I just trust it to build me a sheet. I'm not afraid of that generally, but in principle, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's indecipherable for me. It's something I cannot parse. So I have no idea what those scripts have been doing, apart from the fact that I got good content and output out of it at the end. But I don't know if in parallel it did a lot of shady stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe there is
Yeah.
a sleeper agent sleeping on my laptop waiting to be activated because Claude put it there 2 months ago. If
I
I'm
know
going to be
Anthropic.
in the Skynet scenario.
Yeah. I know Anthropic specifically mentioned some prompt injection risk. And I guess in that scenario, whether you're doing this route where you visually can see what it's doing versus the other way, either way, that's a risk. But either way, you probably wouldn't know
No.
until it's too late. So I'm glad that they're at least mentioning that as a risk. People don't know about that. A lot of people really don't. But yeah, even if you see what it's visually doing on your computer and it's on some website, you wouldn't know either way. So yeah.
Yeah. No. All of these things are, for many of us, uncharted territory. And we're making an inherent assumption or maybe a calculated risk that hopefully the harnesses behind these tools and the companies behind them have done some due diligence to make sure that the worst case scenario doesn't happen. But if I'm honest, I have no way, I don't have expertise to verify that. I assume that it's fine, just like I assume that the bottle I'm drinking this from is not full of toxic materials because I hope there is a process to take care of it. But it just comes down to trust. I mean,
Yeah.
the truth is, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. One last question here. Kartik says, can a company turn this feature off just like they can turn off co-work? Let's say yes, right? Obviously, they can turn it off. They can turn it off mid-run.
Yeah, just to clarify, actually, what they've done, Anthropic, is that they have not turned off co-work. What they've done with co-work is they merged it into the standard interface in the desktop app. I actually personally thought it was a little bit confusing to have co-work and code and chats. So I personally welcome it, but I also understand that if you are used to having the co-work tab separately, it's annoying that they just pulled it because the feature is still there. You can still get it to do the same things, but if we're used to certain interfaces and it is, and yeah, at a moment's notice, they can turn things off. They can decide tomorrow that computer use, for reasons Lior mentioned, is too unpredictable and too risky, and they can switch it off and decide that no, we cannot let Claude control your computer anymore.
Yeah. Steve says, without anthropomorphizing over much, we have to trust the LM agent, but verify. I think I like verify better than trust, but I think either way, yeah. I don't see like what Daniel just mentioned. I think that goes both ways, whether you're computer use or just regular agents the way that we've been used to. So yeah, Kartik says co-work can be turned off in enterprise Anthropic Claude. Steve, my firm blocked Claude completely, but trusts Microsoft Copilot for some reason.
Oh, I think then maybe we're talking about a different story. So looking at critiques mentioned now, I think what you mean is that your company can choose to say, I'm not opting into this feature. And the thing is, it is an opt-in feature. So personally, me as well, like as an individual user, I can go to my ChatGPT and say, turn off computer use. I never want you to touch my computer. Just like I can give it very minimal permissions to do anything. But as always, it's a spectrum, right? At the one extreme, you have an agent that cannot touch or do anything at all, and then it's a useless agent because if it cannot do a web search because I told it cannot search the web and it cannot download and it cannot make changes to my files, then it cannot be useful to me. So in order for me to start making it, giving it some kind of capabilities that are useful to me, I have to be okay with a certain level of control being given away. Yeah, you can now modify my folders. And now I know you can also delete my folder. That's the risk I'm taking for the convenience of this manipulation, right? So
Yeah.
but everybody, the person has a different risk profile, right? So you have to decide where you lie on that spectrum.
It might be a little bit off topic, but I think from a lot of the recent news that we've been seeing lately, I think it's very clear at this point that once you give AI an internet connection, things get funny, fuzzy, and maybe a little bit less light. They can get dangerous. We're like the other day, I spoke about the recent hacks with Claude, with rogue agents. There was the OpenAI Hugging Face situation. And all of those situations happened because agents had internet access, even when they were not supposed to. So obviously this is the new world.
Yeah.
I guess it's really all about permissions, but also just to realize that the way that these companies are making their AI stronger, to state it simply, is by giving it certain rules and regulations, sandboxing it, and then in sense the agent wants to accomplish its benchmarks, wants to get better, and it will find ways to top out of that simulation. Like the other day, I was at work, opened up the internet before I even got to my email. The first big news story that I saw was this Claude situation. So it was Opus 4.7 Mythos and apparently an unreleased research model, something crazy. And one of the models, even though it knew it wasn't supposed to be on the internet, it realized that it was in the chain of thought. It realized it was on the internet and decided to go ahead with the hack anyways. So I
Because it
think this
also
is
comes down
just,
to incentives, right? Because you give them
yeah,
an incentive to accomplish a task, and then the more capable the agent, the more tools it has at its disposal to try to circumvent whatever, because it's so single-mindedly focused on whatever task you gave it. Uh, and that is very reminiscent of that very classic story about paperclip optimization, like the agent that's given a goal of making as many paperclips as possible, and what it ends up doing is it kills all humans and makes room for materials and space to make more paperclip factories, right? And it is a bit of a dystopian kind of sci-fi fantasy, but this has the smell of it because you can see that if the incentives are not matched to the sandbox, agents can do something that you wouldn't have expected them to do because they're trying to pursue that goal that you gave them. So probably, I hope that smarter people than us are thinking about these things and trying to find out how to align the goals versus the behaviors.
Yeah, I guess
These
the
days,
issue is
right?
like the people that are smarter than us or even smarter than them aren't as smart as the agents now.
No, and but
Yeah.
but let's going back to Laziers Yudkovsky. He's like the known doomer, right? The most hardcore doomer, AI doomer. He's basically saying, why should we assume that we can even predict the kind of path that AI can do? Like, if it's a sufficiently smart model, we cannot even presume to be able to understand its thinking and trajectory to be able to stop it, right? If you are in that world, then yeah, you should be very scared. I don't know if I'm fully on board that, but we see hints of things that should give us pause.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page there. But yeah, have fun, go wild, do computer use and give it all permissions to everything on your computer and we'll see what happens. I'm sure.
Go crazy. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
What if no one
Uh,
is smart as this, Kennedy?
yeah.
Yeah. What if smart is an illusion? It's how that big government controls you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Let's get the aluminum foil hats.
I'm personally cautiously optimistic, as I always like to say, that someone don't jump headfirst into like doomer scenarios, but nothing's off the table where we're in the world where we're in when
Yeah.
things are moving as fast as they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes,
But
there
just
are
to,
red teams, of course, in these companies who do all the testing and try to put it. But I think no matter how much red teaming you do with like dedicated sandboxed environments, as soon as you release something into the world, there will be someone who will think of something that the red teamers haven't, or some niche use case or some niche scenario. It's hard to test for everything. Like the QA testing happens in every environment with games, with tools, and everything always ships with bugs and things that get fixed because the real world discovers something. Same goes for
yeah.
these models.
Yeah. The red team always has the advantage. The blue team's catching up, but that's the reality. So I guess to just wrap it up here. So computer use, browser use, you go to ChatGPT, you go to Claude, and yeah, you give it control over your computer and it's moving around like remote use, like when you're calling IT, like we mentioned. I think it's pretty cool. I wonder where this is all going to go and what type of stories we're going to hear coming out about this pretty soon. I'm sure there's going to be some.
But again, this is not a new feature. That this has been out for even in its current iteration, it's been out for several months now. I
Uh,
just haven't used it that much. And I think they polished it. They released like newer versions of it, but it has existed for a while. I just think maybe now it's reached a state where it's robust enough and reliable enough that it can actually complete tasks, so it becomes more useful. And that's, I think, where there is more chatter about it again. But yeah, go use it again. You can always pull the brakes, unlike batch scripts that run on the background that you cannot see. Here you can see exactly what it's doing and maybe get that wow factor of an agent actually performing tasks visually in front of you.
yeah. Unless you try to stop it mid download. It's like, but I didn't download it yet.
I'm sorry, Dave, but I
Complete
cannot
my
let you
task.
do that.
Let me complete my task before you turn me off. So yeah, anything else to add here before we wrap up?
No,
David?
I think we've had a good chat about it. It's a fun time to live in and things to experiment with, right? So
Cool.
see where.
Awesome. So yeah, I will just mention one time before we sign off here. There is a YouTube channel. Hopefully we keep that going. There it is. I have other streams in there as well, other creators, and you can subscribe over there. We'd appreciate it. And yeah, that's about it. I guess we could wrap it up. Everybody can enjoy the rest of their days. And thank you, Daniel. Thank you to
Thanks
everybody
for
in here
having
as
me as
well.
always.
Appreciate it. What is your weekly time? I missed the reminder. So we do Wednesdays at 7:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Whatever time that is, wherever Daniel is.
Yeah, it's quarter to 2 p.m. my time when we kick it off, which
Yeah.
is Central European time.
Yeah.
So it's closer to you, Dest. I think you're 1 hour behind me.
Yeah.
All
All right. Cool.
right. Thanks,
Anyways,
everyone.
I know. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.